Lesson 5, Unit 2. The Procurement Plan. The procurement plan is a guide for the management of contracting for goods or services during the life of the project. This plan identifies and defines the goods and services to be acquired, the quality, the types of contracts that will be used, the delivery times, the costs, and informs on the status of the process. The procurement plan must be detailed enough to clearly identify the necessary steps and the contracting responsibilities from the beginning to the end of a project. The project manager must ensure that the plan facilitates the procurement process and does not become an overwhelming task. In most organizations, procurement is managed by a specialized unit or officer who has a good understanding of the organization policies and procedures, the local laws and regulations, and knowledge of the local market of vendors or suppliers of goods and services. The effectiveness in procuring the goods and services needed by the project depends to a large extent on the quality and the timeliness of the information these units receive from the project on each procurement request. The project manager is responsible for ensuring this information is correct, complete, and on time. Most problems with procurement fall into 4 areas. Their unrealistic time to process the procurement. This is caused by misalignment with the project schedule or when a procurement request is sent too late. Specifications are not complete. This can result in the purchase of goods and services that are not useful to the project. Budget is not realistic. The budget assigned to the purchase of goods and services is too low due to mistakes in estimating costs during the planning phase, and a lack of understanding of local regulations and donor contract clauses, which can result in penalties and cost overruns. Most of these problems can be solved by using a common procurement plan that details the time, specifications, and budget for each good or services. For this to happen, it is important that the procurement officer participates in the development of the plan to ensure that information is useful and realistic. Changes to the project plans also need to be reflected in the procurement plan, especially for changes in dates or budget. The use of this plan ensures that the procurement officer and the project are in common agreement. These are some of the activities required to develop a simple procurement plan: a review of the project scope, a review of the project schedule, the review of the organization's policies and procedures, review of the donor contract, and review of the current market conditions. The project scope identifies all the goods and services that the project will need from vendors. These include the goods and services to deliver the planned outputs, for example, materials, equipment, professional services, and transportation. Information can also include the quantity needed and the quality specifications. Changes in the scope that change a good or services need to be reflected in the procurement plan. A review of the project schedule is one of the most important factors of the procurement plan. The review allows to estimate the time needed to complete the procurement process and deliver the goods or service on the dates needed by the project. If the project needs equipment by a certain date, the procurement officer needs to calculate the time he will need to manage the process to ensure the equipment is available when the project needs it. Changes in the project schedule also need to be reflected in the procurement plan. Analysis of the organization policies and procedures regarding the type of goods and services needed by the projects. This means the need for competitive bids, multiple signatures to approve a purchase, and compliance with local laws. For example, when the project needs to purchase equipment that is higher than a specified value, the organization requires a minimum of 3 bids from vendors. Contract clauses. This is another important consideration. The donors might have specific clauses that govern what type of goods and services can be purchased with their funds. In some instances, the donor will not accept invoices for materials or services that were not approved in the contract. In those cases, the organization will need to cover those costs. It is a responsibility of the procurement officer to have a good knowledge of the local market conditions. These include knowledge of the market prices, vendors, local rules and regulations, taxes, and other duties that can affect the project budget. These are the common elements of a procurement plan. Additional information can be added to reflect the specific needs of the project or the organization. The WBS Code helps identify the activity in the project plan. It is used to track the goods and services needed by each activity or task in the project. The description helps explain the type of good or service that is needed. This section can include the quantity and a reference to any quality standard or technical document. Date is when the goods or services are needed by the project. The procurement officer will use this date to calculate the time required to start the process. A delay in the procurement process can delay the project. It is good practice to add some additional time to avoid surprises. Procurement contract refers to the processes the procurement officer will use. These are competitive bids, direct contracts, price comparisons, and others. The type are regulated by the organization policies and procedures and even the donor contract clauses. This is the limit set by the project for the purchase of goods and services. The procurement officer will use that amount to calculate other costs that are associated with the procurement, for example, transportation, storage, taxes, and others. The last column is to describe the status of the process. This is to inform if the process is on track, delayed, or has been closed. An additional column can be added to include additional information about the process, such as a selected vendor or technical specifications. The procurement plan is a living document. It identifies and defines the goods and services that must be obtained through the various types of contracts in order to achieve the project objectives. The plan lists the most important steps, identifies the dates for the start of the procurement process and delivery of the goods and services. The plan is also a tool that communicates the status of procurement to all interested parties and makes it possible for the project and the organization's procurement unit to coordinate their activities.